Welcome to tonight's program, which is part of our series of programs for job seekers. And we have a lot of new online programs and materials to help people who are looking for jobs. And that's what John's here tonight. So welcome, John Bates.
My name is John Bates. My company is me. I'm the job guy. How I've divided this up is I've divided it up into the things that people should think about in the published job market and things that people should think about in the hidden job market. And the hidden job market is very mysterious sounding, but it's important that we understand it, particularly if we're looking to change careers, because it's more likely that you're going to get a job at a different career through something other than just competing on job postings, simply because you're competing against people that are already in the field. And it's harder and harder with the internet. So it's important that at least you have some understanding how both sides work. Now, when you look at it from a percentage standpoint, when you survey all the people that get jobs, you're going to find that about 1 out of 4 people get jobs strictly by competing for postings. 3 out of 4 people get jobs by either getting around that process or getting there before that process. Now, what is a little bit disorienting for people with the hidden job market is that most of the time the job comes to them. Has there been anybody in this room that has ever gotten a job because someone worked in the company and suggested that they apply or that they work there? Okay, that's really part of this whole process, right? You know, there was really no competition, or if there was, we led them to believe they were competition, but you really had it in the bag, right? And so we need to understand how that works, because the hidden job market is really, it requires 3 things to exist. It requires you to have a skill that's in demand. It requires a company to need the skill at the time that you're selling it. And it requires them having a way to know that you exist. Right? Now, in the case that I just mentioned, the reason it's disorienting is because the connection existed first. Okay, somebody knew you. But it's no good to know you if the company doesn't have a need and you don't have the skills. Right? So there's ways to create that without knowing someone in the company. Otherwise, you just have to sit and wait, right? And that's no good. So we're going to talk a lot about that. But before that, I want to talk about the published market. So the first items 1 through 10, if you do these things, you should give yourself 1 point. And at the end of the first 10 items, you add up the points and multiply them times 1, and that's your score for the top half. So the first thing that we want to talk about, and this may be a little bit of a refresher for folks that were here last time, is I wrote my resume to align with targeted jobs. This is probably the most common problem that I see in marketing of personal skills, resumes being one item, is the fact that what people do is they tend to start the resume by writing about their history, and then put what I call put a hat on it to adjust it, right? So, I was a neurosurgeon for the last 22 years, and now I want to be a drive-through Wendy's attendant, so I'm just going to put that on the top or something, right? What we want to do is we want to start with the destination in mind. We want to start with the job that we're looking to fill, and then figure out how we can make our background look as much like that as possible, okay? So that's the first step. So when I write resumes for my clients, what I do is I say, go out and find like 5 really well-written job descriptions from the help wanted boards, and they can really be from anywhere in the country, it doesn't matter. And then what I do is I go through and I actually say, how can we say these things truthfully? How can we be the job that we want to be? Right? So that's point number 1. So if you're not doing that, you want to think about doing that. The second thing is that your resume contains the keywords. Right? You've all, I'm sure, heard keywords, right? With the internet, you send in a resume in, and you gotta have the right keywords. It's not like there's a keyword glossary anywhere. No one knows, no one in this room, including me, knows what a computer's gonna be set to put in for keywords, or someone's gonna elect to type into a terminal. But the best way to anticipate and guess is to use those job descriptions. One of the other common problems that I see in resumes is people using terminology from an industry they're trying to leave that they don't necessarily have to use, right? You want to use industry terminology that takes you forward. This is particularly prevalent with people that work in one company for a long time, particularly big companies, where their lingo sort of becomes the way you talk, and you inadvertently get all of this different language in there that if you worked at Fidelity, people at Fidelity know, but no one else knows. By looking at other job descriptions, you're able to say, that's what the rest of the world calls it, right? And that includes titles, by the way. Right? I just had a situation today when I was working on a resume with someone where we had to adjust the title that she had in the company because the title that that company gave her was so different than what other people call it that it was disorienting. And so what we use is the titles of the jobs that the real world uses. Okay? So everything that you're looking at, we want to bear that in mind. Resumes are marketing pieces. They're not legal documents. Okay? So our obligation is to be honest and truthful what's in there, but honest from a marketing standpoint, a literal standpoint. Okay? So your job is to give people a clear understanding of what you did. So I'm not suggesting that you would make up a title that was not what you did, but if what you did really lines up with what the real world calls something, I use that title. Now, sometimes what I'll do is I will put the title that I want and then maybe a slash and then the title that they really used. Okay, the real title, or in parentheses, a real title. So if someone does a reference check, they'll say, oh, okay, and so it's not like weird, right? But I do that a lot. That comes up a lot. Nowadays, with keywords, with a computer, normally if the keyword is anywhere in the resume document, the computer will find it, but things are changing. Computer software is becoming more sophisticated, where it actually starting to look for it in context. So in the old days, people used to just have keyword sections and just type a whole bunch of stuff in. One of the great tricks of resume writers was to type it in white type. So you change the color in white, right? Figuring that the computer will find it, but when humans look at it, they won't see all the gobbledygook, right? Very clever for about 5 years. Now they laugh at us for doing that because the computer will convert it, and it really looks kind of weird. So I don't recommend doing that phantom keyword section that we used to do anymore. The third thing on here is that the keywords appear recently. Once the computer's found you, we really want to show that we have recent utilization of the skills. So you get the most amount of points for showing that you've done all of the things the targeted job wants in the most recent job. So we want to look for every opportunity to do that. We also want to look at space allocation in a resume because you want the most recent part of your career to appear successful. A lot of people make these mistakes. I worked with a lot of people that worked at companies of the bygone age. Like DEC, for example, digital equipment, right? Worked with a lot of people that used to work at digital equipment, which was a wonderful company at its time. And these people had huge jobs. And in the last 15 years, they haven't quite gotten to that same level. And so when you look at the resume, you see like an entire page of digital up till like 1988. And then you see the last 20 years in this teeny weeny little bunch of, because they're trying to sell things from the past. And even though those indeed may be the best accomplishments, just visually that what you're presenting is so counterproductive that it doesn't matter. Okay, so you want to try to show as much keyword stuff visibly as recently as possible. It also sets you up for interviews better. Because you want to draw people to talk about the things that have happened recently that are successes. Is a well-written summary statement can really cover a lot of bases. See, when I write a summary statement, I just talk. I don't do like a seasoned IT executive with 20 years experience in cross-functional management and communication, right? Like everybody else. What I'll say is, what is could you mind sharing your field?
I'm actually a cell biologist working in medical products.
Okay, so I would say that I'm looking to leverage my professional experience in biology with recent credentials in X to be able to offer a company a certain solution, right? So that when they look at the summary right away, you're telling really efficiently the life story and how those things combine. Just like I would do if someone got the service and the IT combination, I would say it like just in plain English at the top. Right? So they know your story, and then they're not looking at the resume going, geez, I got to figure this out, and this is too hard, right? You want to make it easy. Got to make it easy. I mean, we're dealing with a stack of folks, and path of least resistance, low risk, right? That's where we want to go. Skills are sort of presumed. Accomplishments are what sets you apart, right? So that when you write the resume, you'll use the job descriptions to put the skills in. And from a formatting standpoint, normally I'll create a paragraph in each job that'll capture the basic skills. But then from there, I want to ask myself, in the position that I'm applying for, what are the results that they would like? I mean, are they looking for me to increase sales or profitability or quality or throughput or whatever it is? And I try to show how I've done that in each of the jobs in the accomplishment section. And then I try to use the skills to show how I accomplished it, right? So that's the ultimate point scale, right? When you get not just the keyword in a recent job, but you get it in an accomplishment to show that you produced a result using those skills, it's the best, okay? Quantifying is great if the quantities are good, right? Quantities that are too big are not very productive. And I see this a lot, where someone will have worked at a big company and they'll have saved $20 million, but they want to work at a small company now, but they leave the $20 million in there, right? And then they're completely perplexed as to why people think they're overqualified, right? Well, we've pretty much told them why. You know, 2-page resumes are safe. When you get beyond 2, some people start objecting. I mean, in science it's different, you know, if you have publications page, things like that.
Is 1 page still the best?
No. One page is what's expected of entry-level people, all right? Now, there are some industries, like investment banking is the premier industry that just really hates 2-page resumes, right? Oh, you've been involved with that? Yeah, I mean, they're sort of weird about that. They want a deal sheet, though, so that's how you cheat, right? You can do a 1-page resume and then put your accomplishments on the second page and still comply, right? But 2 pages is the vast majority of the resumes that I write. Okay? So when you're quantifying things, make sure that you step back and say, does the number I'm using help me, or does it kind of reinforce a bias that I'm trying to overcome? And a lot of times that's the case. Any questions on quantifying? Okay.
I don't understand the quantifying.
Using numbers?
Oh, you just.
Yeah, so like the size of your budget or the number of employees that you supervise or the amount of a sales increase. That's another one. I have people that produced a 3% sales increase targeting a company that wants 1,000% sales increase. You know, obviously, people can look at that and say, that's not really the kind of accomplishment I want.
Is it better to use a percentage instead of
Sometimes.
quantifying?
Sometimes. And sometimes it's better not to put the number. Even though you know you're supposed to have one, you know, sometimes we just know that the number's going to create such a bias that it's not worth putting a number in. It's okay to have an accomplishment that isn't quantified, okay? Well, by going back 15 years, okay, no one is going to think you're doing anything funny if your chronology ends in 1997. Okay, that's sort of expected. Now, I'm not going to say that when you talk to a recruiter, they're not going to ask you information before that, but I'm saying no one's going to look at a resume that stops 15 years ago and think it's weird. And if you combine that with not putting dates in the college experience, you know, then really there's nothing there. It's a job-specific situation. So when you look at a job description, you say they're looking for 5 to 7 years experience, you can do the math. Okay? 5 to 7 years experience, graduate college at 22 or 24, 25, whatever it is. 5 to 7, that's kind of what they're looking for. Add a little fudge factor. You know, so if you're 20 years off either way, obviously you're not what they're looking for. Okay? Now, that doesn't mean that you're never going to get the job. It just means that it's a filtering criteria among a whole bunch of filtering criteria. Now, my personal opinion on the age discrimination issue, there's a couple factors. I think the biggest factor is the security level of the person managing the mature employee. I know that I was a multi-unit manager I was in retail also. I worked for TJ Maxx for years, and I know I was in my mid-40s before I felt comfortable hiring someone to work for me that was in their 40s. It had nothing to do with them. It had to do with me. I just was insecure. I mean, I wanted to manage people that weren't going to challenge me. Once I learned what a wonder it was to have people that would challenge me, I would never have gone back. Now, I was a late bloomer, so don't think that everyone's in their 40s looking at that, but I mean, that's part of the factor, okay? The other factor, and I think that the biggest factor now, is there's a difference between having been on the planet for many years and being old. Okay, there's a big difference, right? We talked a little bit about the social media thing last time, right? Someone who will remain nameless said it was a wave of the future, and it isn't, you know. And we have to look at things like smartphones and social media and Gmail addresses and, you know, all of the things, the way people communicate now, and we either have to be there or we're part of the past. And if we let ourselves be part of the past, we have no one to blame but ourselves. Okay? I mean, I am not a young guy, right? In my business, it's an advantage being a little bit more mature because people think I must have learned something along the way, right? So that's